Serious people who went missing? What happened? Story 1. I walked out of my life when I came home to find another man in my bed with my girlfriend. Spent a year hitchhiking. No missing persons report. No one looked for me. No one missed me. Story 2. I was about 6 years old. One day I was playing outside. There's a petting zoo about 4 kilometers away from where we lived, and I guess I decided to go there. So I did, by myself, barefooted, in my pajamas. When I got there, the manager found out I was alone and had reached my parents by phone. I don't actually remember much of it, but it's pretty hilarious. Story 3. So, back when I was in Boy Scouts, my troop lost me. Twice. In the same night, while I was still in my tent. This is not an exaggeration. The story is thus. We were at Camp Dekra in Iowa. We had the idea to go and perform a raid on the counselors' tent cabins. I, however, was feeling ill, so I specifically said, "I'm not feeling well. I'm going to sleep." They acknowledged this, expressed regret that I was not coming along, and went to have their fun. They have their fun. They retreat into the wood line. Then they take a head count. I am not in the head count. They expect me to be in the head count because they forgot. So now, there is a missing camper. The entire camp is set to searching for me. Sometime during this, a guy from my troop decides to, get this, check the tents. I am in my tent, as I should be, so he goes to report that I am found. I go to the bathroom during this time. Someone comes back to the camp and checks my tent. I am in the bathroom, so I am not in my tent. I am now missing again. I get found sooner this time. Edit. You Iowa people, I live in MN, just north of Decorah. It's like 45 minutes away. Story 4. When I was 4, I got lost in a city and was rescued by what my dad thought was a gang. We had dinner in Chinatown with another family, 5 kids in all. Crossing the street after dinner, we were holding hands in a big chain. My older sibling let go. When the light changed and everyone crossed, I stayed on the sidewalk. I was looking through a window into a barber shop where some huge guy was having his head shaved. Can still picture the scene. When I finally looked around, everyone was gone. I started to cry. A group of teenagers approached and asked if I was lost. I said yes. A tall kid hoisted me into his shoulders and started down the block. Other kids split up and went in different directions. We rounded a corner and I saw my dad. He turned white and ran toward us. The kid lowered me to the ground. A few other kids were there. They stood around awkwardly while the tall kid explained what happened to my dad. My dad, not a demonstrative guy, flung himself at the kid and hugged him. My mom appeared and picked me up. Years later, my dad told me he saw the same group of kids hanging around when he first parked in the city that evening and was suspicious that they were a gang. He was embarrassed and tried to be less judgmental after that. Wish I could thank those guys. This was a long time ago. Answer. A few years ago, I was working a job in Manhattan. The building I worked in had 11 floors in it. One day after going out for a smoke, I went inside and pushed the button for the elevator. The doors opened and a very young blonde girl of about 11 was standing there in tears. I asked her what was wrong, but she couldn't speak English. She seemed to be speaking Polish, but I wasn't sure. She came out of the elevator crying and just looking at me with so much fear in her face. I walked her away from the elevator trying to figure out what was going on. She was wearing high heels and a really short skirt, as well as wearing a bunch of makeup. All she kept saying was 7 and uncle. I was so confused and had absolutely no idea what to do. I worked on the 7th floor, so I took her up to my office in hopes that someone would know her. They did not. I ended up taking her to every floor in the building, asking people if they knew who she was. No one had a clue. I was losing heart and was getting ready to call the cops. We finally reached the 11th floor, and I learned her uncle had an office there. When she saw him, she ran to him screaming and crying. He looked at me like I was a pedo. I quickly explained what had happened. Turns out her aunt had dropped her off at the building, gave her the wrong floor number, and then just took off. The poor thing was horrified. Story 5. I had a 12-day period of dissociative amnesia while I was in the USF. I was doing laundry one Sunday night while waiting to start extra cleaning duty. I woke up 12 days later to my supervisor shaking me awake in my dorm room. No one saw me for those 12 days. No one heard from me. I was not a recluse. I was extremely outgoing and easily noticed. How I vanished for 12 days is amazing. Editing this to not have to reply to everyone. I was considered AWOL, got an Article 15 out of it, was medically separated with a $25,000 severance, and told by the USAF psychiatrist that I was useless to the USAF. I couldn't explain it, and through every pill I was prescribed and some therapy, they couldn't unlock my brain. It said that it does not happen to people who are in their older 20s, but it did. It happened the once. My brain scan showed that the hole everyone has is larger in yours kind of thing. I never looked into it, as I really don't want to know if I went to France and eliminate people as a transvestite or just fudge off for 2 weeks. I had no reason to desert. I was in for over 6 years at that point. I'd been to PSAB, Saudi, South Korea, France, Spain, and was in Germany. At the time, I loved my time enlisted and would do it again. Please read the comments to see that I was a good airman and would not have deserted. Answer: okay, this will probably get buried. But your brain scan, it has been shown that people who have, as you say, larger holes in their brains than other people means that you are missing some of the gray matter in your brain that goes around that area. People who have brain scans like that are more prone to schizophrenia. I studied this case in neurology. A man was pretty much normal, then for 3 days went missing and came back totally fine, but had no memory of what happened those 3 days. However, before he disappeared, he was starting to show prodromal schizophrenia symptoms. But when he returned, he was completely normal. He doesn't remember any part of him devolving into this and then disappearing. So he forgot, I think, about a week total. So far, he hasn't shown any more signs of schizophrenia. He does not need medication, and he is fine. He also has a brain scan similar to yours. Anyway, that is my 2 cents. Story 6. My high school, American football team, had an away game in a somewhat sketchy city. Bus took the team back to high school afterwards. I was too young to drive and I was grounded and had my phone taken away. I waited at the school for an hour and a half, but my parents never came to pick me up. So I started the 4-mile walk back to my house, carrying all my pads and school books. While I was walking back, my mom showed up and I wasn't there. She panicked and found the coach and told him. My coach sent a group text to the entire team asking if anyone knew where I was. Came to school the next day, and everyone thought I had missed the bus and gotten lost. It ended up being a team joke for the rest of the year. Bonus: my parents never took my phone away again. Edit: some answers to the comments. My mom was visiting my dad in the hospital. However, she neglected to tell me that she was going to visit him, or might be late picking me up. Yes, I could have probably asked my coach to call her, but somewhere in my conniving teenage mind, I must have wanted to punish my mom for taking my phone away. Answer: never understood parents that take away cell phones. Just because kids enjoy using them doesn't make them any less of a necessity. My mom was the opposite. I had to have my phone with me at all times. Now, years later, it feels weird leaving my phone at home. Edit: getting a lot of replies along the lines of, I didn't have a phone as a kid and I turned out fine. Therefore, The rest of the child population also turned out fine. This article suggests that child abduction rates have declined due to the introduction of cell phones. Story 7. I went sleepwalking one night when I was 10 years old, unlocked the front door, and went for a stroll through the neighborhood. I woke up a few hours later in the middle of the street, barefooted, in a cul-de-sac I've never been in before. Scared the bejesus out of me. Ended up running through the streets until I found my way back home. My parents had been shoot bricks looking all over for me. They put a lock on my door after that, so I couldn't go for any more midnight strolls. Answer. Same thing happened to me once. Woke up in my boxers in the middle of January, in Montana, which means it was freezing, standing on my sidewalk, freaked out and pounded on the door until my parents let me in. Edit. It was a weird old-school door that you could open from the inside but not the outside. I believe my parents and I determined that I unlocked the deadbolt but did not turn the lock on the handle, thus locking myself out. Story 8. I was hiking to see the volcanic eruption back in 2010, the one before all the grounded flights. On the way back, I got separated from my group. We were about 8 to 10, one of which was a very good friend of mine. Anyway, I tend to walk pretty fast, especially on my way down from a mountain. This was in March in Iceland, so it gets dark pretty soon and fast. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have a torch on me, and in maybe half an hour everything went pitch black. I had chosen to walk the same path as the one I went up. This was extremely stupid of me, as that path was about 5 meters away from a 15-meter drop into a canyon. Not only that, but the path was beside a waterfall. Waterfalls tend to have a lot of mist coming from them. Said mist goes onto the path, and because this is March in Iceland, and on a mountain it's about 5°C without wind chill, that mist turns to basically an ice skating rink on a 45 angle. That was an experience. I had been lost for about 5 hours. I didn't turn up until I got down from the mountain. But I was one of 20 that got lost that Saturday, 2 of whom died. Icelandic SAR groups were quite busy that time. Answer. I work as a seasonal backcountry ranger here in the US. If there is one takeaway that I hope people gain from your post, it is that you should always carry a source of light with you whenever you go for a hike. Never assume that you will make it back to civilization before dark, and never plan to rely on another person's flashlight. This also mildly to severely obnoxious to that other person. Those cell phone flashlight apps don't count. You want a decent flashlight that is going to provide you with enough light to see well, but also communicate your position to rescuers. Headlamps are even better, as they are much less cumbersome to use and carry. Edit. I encourage anyone who goes hiking to read up on the 10 essentials, as it is a good way of ensuring that you are properly prepared. Story 9. Once when my grandfather was watching my younger sister and I decided to take a shower and didn't think to tell anyone. I took my leisurely shower, and when I came out, no one was in the house. I went outside to see if maybe they were out there. It was summer, so reasonable to spend the evening in the yard. It turned out my grandfather and sister had alerted the neighbors that I had gone missing, and the entire neighborhood was out looking for me. It wasn't even that long of a shower. Story 10. 1999. In Germany at the time, and friend and I had gone to the Love Parade in Berlin. Was a crazy weekend. We were both 20 and had no plans other than just getting to Berlin. We partied the entire long weekend. One night we slept in an alleyway. One night we slept in the park. And the last night we met a cool guy at a party to let us crash at his hotel. So, finally getting to the missing part. On Sunday, the train station was insane, as like 1 million people were trying to leave the city. Friend and I spoke almost no German. We had already bought our tickets for the return trip and had both. Used the last of our DM, currency pre-euro, for breakfast that morning. We ended up getting separated in the train station. I looked at my ticket and was at the right track at the right time. Showed someone that worked there my ticket and pointed at the train. Got a nod as it was so loud in there. Got on the train. On the train, there were like 1.5 trillion people. Every seat filled. People in the aisles, people in the bathroom, people between the trains. A couple minutes late, the train finally took off. Now, we were going to a school that summer that was about 2 hours south of Berlin. I had fallen asleep on the floor of the train, huddled between a bunch of other hungover ravers. Then I noticed that I had been on the train for almost 4 hours, was freaking out that I had passed my stop. Nope. Train was going west and we weren't even that far away from Cologne. I freak out, get off at the next stop to try and figure out how to get home. I am sitting at this tiny train station in the middle of nowhere, Germany, not speaking almost any German, no money, no contact information for where I was staying, and still hungover from partying all week. I ended up looking at different train schedules on the wall and pretty much guessed which trains would lead me back to my city. The train that I needed wasn't coming for like 5 hours. Because I had no money, I couldn't buy another ticket. In the first train, I found this empty conference-like room on the train and hid in a dark corner. Got off somewhere when I was getting too nervous about getting caught. Waited for another train for a couple hours. This train, I hid in the bathroom. Knock knock ticket. Person was knocking. I decided that I would just jump in the deep end and open the door and explain what was going on. As I spoke. Almost no German and he spoke almost no English. He was just super pissed. Ended up not calling the police or even writing me a ticket, but made me get out at the next stop. The next stop was some train station that was so small it didn't even have a roof. Ended up sleeping on the grass behind the train station as the train that I needed wasn't coming until 5:30 a.m. In the morning, I again pulled the riding without a ticket scam. This was a double-decker train, and I was on the top and watching the both entrances to the car. When the ticket person came in and went downstairs first, thank God. I went to the other side and went downstairs when he came upstairs. Finally got to my city at like 7 a.m. Almost 24 hours after my friend and I got separated. Got back to the dorm, and friend was just sitting on the bed in a towel after having just taken a shower. Was like, "Where the fudge were you? I was about to tell someone you were missing." Not sure if I am glad he didn't tell anyone I was missing or pissed that he didn't. Haha. We are still best friends now, 15 years later. Story 11. When I was a young lad, my brother and I used to go to this gymnastics play area. They had trampolines, those bars you swing around, and a tightrope over a pit full of pieces of foam. My brother and I decided to play hide and seek. I hid first. About an hour later, the place is closing. My mom asks my brother where I am. He says, "We're playing hide and seek, and I've hidden really well." 3 hours later, the staff have locked all of the doors and phoned the police. My mom was in a blind panic. My brother had given up on finding me and was bouncing on a trampoline. The staff were frantically tearing the place apart looking for me. My brother got bored of trampolining, so decided to play in the foam pit. He jumped in and heard a loud, "Ouch." I climbed out of the foam and said, "Did I win?" We never went back to that place. Edited, misspelled. Brother. Answer, ha 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 ha. Reminds me of the time I was at some children's arcade place, like Chuck E. Cheese. I don't remember why I was there, but I was just old enough to consider it lame, so I hid between 3 arcade games that formed a nifty little triangle. Obviously, it was wide enough for me to squeeze in. I just stood there, shaking my head and face-palming hard as I had a clear view of all of these people looking for me. I was such a little shoot thinking they were stupid for not being able to find me. Story 12. I was at a college house party. I went there with several friends. I didn't have a cell phone yet, managed to hold out until 2004. Our dorm rooms came with landlines at the time. I ended up going home with a guy and hooking up with him. Woke up the next day, checked my email on his computer, and found a ton of frantic emails from my friends. They actually thought that I'd been abducted, roofied, or eliminate myself. I was very depressed at the time. They filed a missing person report on me with campus security, and several friends were searching for me in the woods. TLDR. My friends thought it was more likely that I'd gotten kidnapped than gotten laid. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like this. Almost considered using a throwaway. To clarify, yes, I'm a woman. And I'm pleasantly surprised that there were so few PMs and comments calling me a slut. Stop it. Slut shaming is not cool. How do men expect to get laid if there aren't women who also want to get laid? Spoiler alert, we exist. Story 13. I drank too much. Left my buddy's house to get my phone out of his car. Woke up several hours later with about 5 cops standing on me yelling at me to quit resisting. Turns out I had wandered through 2 gates, a front porch, and into his neighbor's basement. When the cops showed up, I was snuggling with his neighbor's 2 Rottweilers on their basement floor. Reminds me of Lethal Weapon 3 now. They said I was lucky they didn't eat me. I was also lucky I didn't get shot. This took place in a small town near East St. Louis. Pretty rough neighborhood. I was arrested for felony breaking and entering. Luckily, the cops ended up being cool and understanding. My buddy's elderly neighbors were just freaked out by a tipsy, naked white guy sleeping with their dogs in their basement. My buddies had no idea where I was until the next afternoon when I called him from jail. Luckily, he was a good dude and bailed me out. All the charges were dropped. When I walked up to the attorney and judge at court, they all pretty much made fun of me and just asked if I learned my lesson. Story 14. Throwaway account because I don't want this story tied to my main account. My friend and I were 15 at the time when we were both drugged and taken various places within the state for 3 days. During this time, we were constantly separated, reunited, drugged, emotionally, physically abused, and honestly feared that we would end up being taken down. For 3 days, we were constantly on the move. We never visited any homes. They made us sleep in wooded areas with thin blankets, separated from each other. This was during winter, although there was no snow yet. The man, sounds strange calling him a man, that I was nicer than the other. He seemed to be the follower. He never did anything as cruel as the other did. But to this day, I can't stand certain names, accents, clothing, looks in general. When I say he was nicer, it's because he was rather gentle instead of forceful. On the 3rd day, they took us to a town about 40 miles south of our home in the middle of, frankly, nowhere. It's a town with 1 gas station and few homes. They left us on the mountainside, told us the common, if you call the police, blah blah, we'll eliminate you, blah blah. We were there for a while before another car came around. Hunting is rather popular around those parts. The guys who found us thought we had been stabbed or shot. Looking back, I was a fudge chaotic mess as they tried to approach us. I became very defensive as my friend was still mostly lethargic, and I didn't believe that they were there to help us. Another half hour maybe passed, and police finally showed up. I hadn't felt so happy to see officers before in my entire life because I had been one of those fudge the police stupid girls back then. I remember falling and just crying. I remember grabbing my friend and telling her it was going to be okay. About a week later, they found the guys. They arrested them, and they went to prison for some time. They both plead guilty for reduced sentences. The substances they gave us make a lot of the details sketchy, so I can't really remember too much. I have scars still. I have trust issues. My friend, on the other hand, turned to substances quickly after, and we've lost touch with one another. Edit. Thank you everyone for such kind words. I'm trying to reply to just about everyone. Also, there are common questions that keep coming up, so I'll just add them here too for easiness and such. 1. How did they take you? How did it begin? We met them at the local mall. After about an hour or so, they offered us dinner from a local truck shop just out of our town. They had cheap food and pretty dang good food at that. After dinner, we drove around for a bit, believing that they were going to be taking us home as we were pretty close to home. From there, the start of the situation began. 2. What substances did they give you? Over the course of 3 days, we were given different substances, and I'm not sure about how many my friend was given or what kind, but I know I was given among other things: painkillers, Adderall, ecstasy, Ambien, and a form of a date violation substances. 3. How old were they?